Hey guys, welcome back to the Westinghouse television restoration project. You might be surprised that I didn't finish this off months ago and get it back to the owner. Well, the reason is simply that he wasn't in any particular hurry to get it back, and I was crunched to get some other stuff done, so he told me to take my time with it. If you recall, the set had a messed up tuner that I had to disassemble and repair, and this is a bizarre design. If you haven't seen the earlier installments, I highly recommend you go back and watch it, because this is the only TV you're ever likely to see that has two Lochtel 7A5 tubes for the horizontal output, and some very strange looking parts. The tuner, strange coil here. It's just a wacky design. Alright, so I got it working, but wasn't crazy about the sound quality and just kind of the overall image quality reception of it. I figured some of it could be attributed to the busted tuner, but I wanted to finish going through everything, so that's what I just did. Turns out there were a few caps left in the audio I hadn't done, because I primarily had worked with this chassis flipped around the other way. Well, I flipped it around this way, and it's funny how they can kind of give you a fresh perspective on things, not just allowing me access to some parts down in here, but I went over some resistors that I had missed too, and I'm very curious to see what effect that has. So I went through particularly the IF and some of the sound circuitry. One thing you'll see commonly in these early sets is in the IF string there'll be a whole bunch of resistor dividers for the AGC voltage, typically 1K resistors or 10K. So in particular, you had a 1K there, a 1K there, a 1K there, and some 10Ks. So what that does is there's a bias voltage derived from the signal strength, and it's fed through the tubes to control how much gain they have. Well, check this out. One of them, which looks kind of dubious, it's a little crummy looking, and on the back side it's actually split. Well, when I measured this guy, it should be 1,000 ohms, right? It's 83.7. That should make a difference. I kept going and I found a 100 ohm resistor that is 142. Not as extreme as the other, but still 42% off. And this is also supposed to be 100, and it's 160. This is supposed to be 68, and it is almost double that at 130. So by replacing those and a couple caps I had missed, as these are not resistors. Sometimes people get a little confused. This may be a 10K power resistor. No, it's a 10,000 picofarad capacitor, and this is a 2200 picofarad cap. Those were in the audio circuit. So with those changes made, let's flip this guy back down, and I want to talk about one other little unexpected discovery I made since I worked on this set, and it has to do with the signal that's feeding into it. Alright, I have the set fired up with a test pattern. It's a little jittery. I want to go through and clean all these controls again, but the important thing is tons of volume now. So what I want to work on now is getting the geometry as best I can, and adjust the focus, the ion trap magnet, get everything all tuned up with test patterns and such. But yeah, that was it. Here's the set playing with the signal source. Great sound, pretty darn good picture. I'm happy with that. Now, I'd mentioned a signal source. What was I referring to? Well, if you've been a long time viewer of this channel, you should recognize this converter box in the background. I picked up a couple of these Access HD DTA 1010s back in 2008, 2009 when the government gave out coupons. I've used the heck out of them. The other box in particular is the one I've used in so many of my videos when fitting a signal into these sets. I've come to realize that the boxes are worn out. The signal they're putting out has some noise in it, and it's not as strong as a newer box. In a way, I think it led to some superior results because I struggled and had to tweak alignments and put in all good fresh tubes and go over everything to get a good picture with a crummy signal source. And when I hooked up a good clean signal source, the picture looked phenomenal. So what I'm using now is a much newer box. It's a Zenith. No, it's not the same Zenith. Somebody owns the name Zenith these days. It's a DTT 901. I got this from a coworker that didn't need it at home anymore. Not only does it produce a much cleaner signal, you can go through channels a lot faster. It scans faster, has more options in the on-screen menu. I think it's lacking. It doesn't have a switch on the back to go between channels 3 and 4. I think it's hard-coded for channel 3, or maybe the on-screen menu lets you change it. But of course, you need to be able to see that in order to change it. But at any rate, so some of the issues I've had, some of the stuff I've been struggling with was self-created because I had a crummy signal source. So I encourage you, I see this all the time, people post, I see retrace lines, I'm having trouble with the getting a lock, it doesn't look that good. Always check your signal source. Ideally, you'd have 2 or 3 different sources to try. I've had the set playing a few hours with no issues whatsoever. Very happy with the performance. Only thing I want to do with the screen is I need to move the image over that way to the left a little bit. Now, what's pretty common on these really early sets is some of these adjustments are mechanical, not electrical, so you don't have potentiometers or coils to adjust. You need to manipulate this stuff. That's why they have thumb screws on them. So this you would loosen up. That loosens the yoke so you can rotate it to level out the screen if it's crooked. These you can loosen up to move the entire assembly back and forth to make sure the yoke's as far up as possible. This is the focus coil. And for that, we have 3 screws, 1, 2, and there's one down below, that are mounted on really heavy-duty springs. You tighten and loosen those to tweak this, that is for centering. And notice this one appears to be tightened down more than that one. I'll have to get a big old screwdriver out, and I'll try loosening this one up, which will straighten this magnet out that way and see if it shifts the image over. I may need to, instead of loosening this, I may need to tighten this or tweak that, or maybe even the one below. We shall see. But that is how you center the picture on these sets. Now, while that's been going on, I've been working on the cabinet. Did the usual treatment. Cleaned it with Gojo. Howard's Restore Finish Mahogany to give a little more color back into it, followed by Oz Cream Polish. I took out the safety glass and bezel to make my life a little bit easier. There's a plastic bezel on it, which, because of the high voltage, attracts some really fine particulate matter. It's on the back side, so you, of course, wouldn't really see it, but since I've got it out, I'll clean it anyways. And a safety glass. It's a bit, I'm sure it's from cigarette smoke. It's got a little bit hazy. Clean that up with some glass cleaner. Overall, it's in really good condition. It has a nice aged look to it. No veneer loss. No separation, no bubbling of the veneer, and a really nice color to it. Decals are pretty darn sharp. Yeah, channel numbers are worn out. It's just a painted brass plate from people changing the channels a million times over the years. The numbers wore off. Oh well. Now this, I admit, I had not noticed until I was cleaning the cabinet. This comes off. They have a thumb screw on either side. that exposes the bottom front of the chassis, which has additional controls. So the main controls up here are your standard power volume, horizontal vertical hold, brightness contrast, channel fine tuning. If you take this off, you can get at focus and width and height and vertical linearity, which more commonly would be on the back of the set. But that's another common feature of really early sets is, well, for better or worse, it tended to need to be adjusted more. However, I gotta say, when you feed in a good, clean signal, and you got all fresh tubes in there and some nice new caps, once I dialed in an image, I have not needed to go back and adjust it. The picture has not started rolling or anything like that. Alright, let's see about centering this image. Let's see about centering this image. I'm going to try loosening up that left side, which seems to be tightened down more than the other two screws. There we go, counterclockwise. Yep, that is moving it to the left. Fantastic. So, a little bit more of that. And, oh, I think I went a little too far there. Now, what I recommend you do is exactly what they did back then, typically, which is to set it to overscan a bit. See, these vintage TVs don't have any voltage regulation, and your signal, or rather your horizontal hold, can vary a little bit. And when I vary the horizontal hold, it shifts the image back and forth. So by overscan, I mean adjust the width so that it actually extends a bit off the sides. That will help when your customer has your set, in case there's some variation on their line voltage, which will cause the picture to shrink or grow depending on how the line voltage varies and how they have the horizontal hold adjusted. And notice we see a little bit of scan lines here, just because this doesn't have retrace blanking. But if you just adjust right. Now these controls, I just cleaned them again, and they're still touchy. If you recall, the contrast on this set works, but they actually have like a volume control on the video signal. When the video's on one side of the pot, their left side goes to ground, and the middle goes through coax all the way up to this control in the front of the video amp on the back. So that is this knob I'm adjusting right now. It's a little touchy, but you get things just right, you leave them alone, set plays fine. Alright, little bit to do on the cabinet, and then time to pop this all back together. Loose knob. I took a look at another one. It's also loose. The way they did this is really crude. So plastic on the inner part, outer part is a brass shell, and they just crimped it in several spots around the perimeter, and probably the plastic has shrunk since this was made, so this just so two of these knobs are actually flaky. This is the one that goes on the volume power control, so you can imagine I've manipulated a lot. Not quite sure what to do about that. Try getting some glue in there, but there's very little gap here. Try squeezing it some more, I suppose. I think that they use kind of a specialized tool. But also, secret weapon. Early television museum swap meet last year, I got a whole bag of knobs that I believe are just like this. The later Westinghouse knobs, they went to clear plastic that were reverse painted with brass paint. So they don't have any of these issues. I'm sure they were cheaper to make too. But it's nice to have the earlier brass style. It came with the set. So let me go through my grab bag. I can save myself a lot of effort if I can find some that are in better shape than trying to fix up these particular knobs. Maybe not. It looks like most, if not all of these are the newer style. So this is how the newer ones go. And it is tempting to go with these because they don't tarnish, they don't wear out. And they look pretty darn similar, but we'll go through here. I think I see one or two. Okay, yeah, here's some of the brass. Ooh, this one's even worse. Although the brass is in better shape. Alright, let me see what I got. I'll figure something out one way or another. Ho-ho, I was reviewing my work and realized I almost forgot something. There are still caps down in there. That is the underside of the RF high voltage power supply. We need to get that out. We gotta take the box apart and tip it back. 1, 2, 3, 4 nuts I can get to. And we'll see how much lead length there is to tip it to the side. And there are 4 caps we want to get at down there and a few resistors to double check. There are only 2 wires to disconnect. Filament supply and the plate supply. Gets its ground from the case and the chassis. And yeah, there are 3 caps underneath. I think we have a couple of 0.047s of 3 0.047s of 400 volts and some resistors, 68 ohm, 10K, and 2.2K. Let us check those. Obviously, the set is working. We have high voltage, but I haven't actually checked it. It's kind of awkward to get at. It might be a little bit lower than it should be. Let's check these out. So it should be 68 ohms. It is 160. It's a tad high, more than double what it should be. 10K is 14. It's 40%. Jeez. It's gonna be a heart attack. And the 2.2K is measuring 2.35K. That one's okay. But the other 2 definitely will go. Oh man, they're good guard dogs, but jeez. Any noise sets them off. Alright, so I'm going to replace the 3 paper caps and those 2 resistors. Now there is a cap down here you adjust for efficiency essentially. It alters the frequency so the circuit operates at its optimal efficiency, meaning the lowest current draw, producing the highest output voltage supply. I believe it should be around 9,000 volts, considering this is a 10 BP4. It's also quite dirty and dusty. As you can imagine, all this high voltage static charge building up attracts a lot of fine dust. I already blew out the inside a bit, so I don't think it's too bad in there. That was a bit hard to pop off. And we have dual ceramic doorknob caps to filter the high voltage, which is nice. I should probably just go ahead and replace that tube. It's a Sylvania. It's hard to say if it's the original or not. Yeah, they tend to last a long time, but not forever. And if it's degraded a little bit, any slight boost you can give to the high voltage is good. It'll make the picture just that much brighter and sharper. Alrighty, that was easy enough to do. The only thing original I left in here is a ceramic trimmer cap. Those really never go bad. And a 100K resistor down in this hole, which not only is very difficult to get at, but it also measures spot on. But it's not a critical value either. It goes between the 2 high voltage doorknob caps to form a pi low pass filter. No reason to dig that out and replace it. So we're ready to reinstall this. Just attaches right here. I'll clean that dust off before I do. Then just need to hook up those 2 wires. What I'm hoping is for a little bit of a boost on the high voltage. I suspect I'll need to tweak that trimmer cap because these I suspect will have affected the free running frequency of this oscillator. So we shall see. And I reinstalled the high voltage box, have the set back up and running. Now, there's an interesting trick you can do to adjust that high voltage. Now, normally the horizontal scan and the boost voltage and the high voltage are all derived from the flyback. In this case, the high voltage supply and the deflection circuits are completely independent. So what that means is I can adjust the high voltage without affecting the scan. And, well, the more high voltage you have, the more energy the electron beam is going to have, the less it will be deflected by the deflection circuits. So if I want maximum high voltage, that will occur when the screen has shrunk the most. And since it's the horizontal scanning off the screen a bit, I can just look at the vertical. The set's on its side right now. So when this is at its narrowest, I know I have the highest high voltage. You can also notice the screen intensity changes. So here I'm way off, so it's deflected more and it's dimmer. As I adjust the cap, it's getting brighter and it's squeezing in. And at the point, and now I'm tightening it more, and now it's starting to go the other way, so I'm going to back off a little bit. So it's sort of like peaking coil on a radio. Right about there, it's where this is at the skinniest, and it's nice and bright too. So here's maximum brightness. I think that's brighter than it was before. I also put a new old stock high voltage rectifier in it. Alright, so I am satisfied with this electrically. Time to put it back in the cabinet. Here it is, and back together and playing. Now notice when I use some bright lights, you can see the cabinet, it really washes out the picture. That's how it goes with these early sets, and then need to be watched in dim lighting. Overall, it was not hard to get the chassis back in the cabinet. I did install 4 new rubber feet. I didn't do anything with the knobs. I decided it wasn't worth the risk of messing them up. And the judgment call, just like with refinishing something or polishing metal. I decided they weren't that bad, and I didn't want to permanently mess them up by trying to inject, say, 2-part epoxy or something like that, or crimping them even tighter. Didn't want to crack the plastic. It's not that big a deal. The knobs work fine, so I just left it alone. It is a bit of an odd experience to operate the set. One thing, the speaker being on the side, it's odd, especially when you're in front of the set and hearing. It's noticeable the sound is coming out to the right. They did that to, well, save space. Where would you put the speaker on the front? This just isn't enough room. You have to make the cabinet even larger. And they certainly weren't the only ones to do that. It's also a bit of an odd set to operate. They hadn't figured out the best way to do AGC and contrast and whatnot. Some of these really early designs, I've never seen a set where they used a potentiometer on the output of the video detector like this does. It's easy to really wash out the picture by setting the contrast too high. It gets all kind of odd. So to get the contrast in the sweet spots, so you get good sync and good contrast. It's a little weird. But when you get things dialed in right and get the lighting right, it produces a really nice, sharp picture. So I'm very happy with the final results. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at restoring a quirky early Westinghouse TV.